Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Lay aside the garments that are stained with sin and be washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's a fountain flowing for the soul unclean. Oh, be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Are you washed in the blood, in the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains, lose all their guilty stains, lose all their guilty stains, and sinners plunge beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. Ever since by faith I saw the stream thy flowing wounds supply, redeeming love has been my theme, and shall be till I die, and shall be till I die, and shall be till I die. Redeeming love has been my theme, and shall be till I die. Then in a nobler, sweeter song I'll sing thy power to save, when this poor lisping, stammering tongue lies silent in the grave, lies silent in the grave, lies silent in the grave. When this poor lisping, stammering tongue lies silent in the grave. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. The Lord has promised good to me, His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we know last days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. All right, there you go. I told you I'd do some music on this last one. Broke out a couple songs today. They weren't the best, but at least you got some. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Welcome to the very last Wednesday Night Live, at least for a while here online. Let me see if I can get over here. I got to move things around, my guitar, capo, music, all of those things. So bear with me for just a second. I'm going to see who's on here. Great to have the Hearts here, the Steeds here, Anita, David Tucker, who asked for the intro last week, said a much better intro. Well, David, I'm glad that you're pleased. I am taking just a minute to see if I can find my my Facebook comments, which I haven't seen yet. All right, there we go. Eric, the Claytons, Daniel. So glad to have you guys on here as well. And glad you guys could be a part of tonight for our last Wednesday Night Live. So I hope you guys are doing well. Hope the sound and video is coming through just fine. And we're going to jump in here and get started with the very final. All of these are really kind of shed a tear. It's kind of like the last of the last here, at least for the time being. And tonight's final fact of the day. I figured since we just celebrated Labor Day this past week, or this past weekend, that this would be a good one to share with you guys. And let me just say this as well. Do me a favor and comment and let me know that our Facebook and YouTube videos are doing all right. My Facebook video is frozen. I don't know what it looks like on your end. So maybe comment on here both on YouTube or Facebook. Just first person, let me know. Hopefully everything's going okay. But I thought with Labor Day, this would be a good fact of the day to share. I thought it was kind of interesting to share with you. Here is today's fact of the day. Did you know that the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council, first of all, that's a bit of information. I didn't even know there was such a thing. As the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council says, that between Memorial Day and Labor Day, Americans, just Americans, eat 7 billion hot dogs. 7 billion hot dogs. Again, so really there's two pieces of information there. First of all, did you even know that there's a National Hot Dog and Sausage Council? I did not. Maybe you did. That's pretty impressive. And then on top of that, between Memorial Day and Labor Day, that's such a short span. If you think about it, Americans eat 7 billion hot dogs. It's crazy. But there you go. There is your fact of the day. Do with that what you will. Maybe next time Memorial Day and Labor Day comes around and you see somebody eating a hot dog on Memorial Day, just say, hey, we're just 6.99999999999 billion or billion hot dogs away from reaching our goal. So there you go. Today's question of the day. All right. If you have comments about hot dog consumption, you are welcome to share them. I'll see what they say. That is, Francis, that's a lot of hot dogs. Yes, it is. That is a lot of hot dogs. Here's the question of the day. Last week I asked you for a favorite book, and today I'm going to ask. This is the question here. It is, what is your favorite game to play? My family likes to play board games. We have multiple closets that are full of board games, and I like to buy new ones and play new ones, and it's something that we all enjoy. The only problem is a lot of times Cassie and I don't like the same ones that the kids do, but that's okay. We're getting closer on them, but like they want to play Monopoly like at 9 o'clock at night, and it's like it's gonna be like a 2-hour game. We got to start way earlier than this. You got to catch mom and dad at the right time to play something like Monopoly, because Monopoly is not something we all want to play all the time. Hey, that's even more impressive, Adam. If you didn't eat any hot dogs and we still ate that many, I agree, David. It's time to get into the hot dog business. That is a lot of hot dogs. Terry Cross didn't eat any hot dogs either. That's impressive. We had a lot of people that did not eat hot dogs. Here's what's really cool. This is what's cool about this this question that we got going on here. Kristen, I've never heard of 314 or 3-14, whatever that is. I've never heard of it. Let's see here. Fred Clayton says hand and foot. I'm not familiar with that one either. That sounds interesting as well. The Hearts chime in with this, that, and everything. Again, never played it, but would love to try some of these out sometime. Some ones that I have heard of. Farkle is a favorite in our household. Eric, we enjoy doing that. Sequence I bought just this last like Christmas season, and Cassie and I enjoy playing that one together. Let's see here. Adam, you've always been a Stratego fan. I do remember that. Taboo is a great one with the right people to play. A lot of fun. Cassie mentions Catchphrase and Mad Gab. We do like to play those. David, Mexican Train Dominoes. I love to play that as well. And David, when you say train, are you speaking of like why am I drawing a blank on it? Anyway, Scotland Yard. I'm not familiar with. Okay, so Chris, it's a card game like Kings. Okay, Canasta. I'm not familiar with that one either, so that sounds interesting as well. Um, uh, yeah, so these are some good ones because I love to play different types of games, but it's good to see what other people are playing and what they like to play because maybe I'm missing out. So yeah, the Claytons chime in. I think it's calling there Mexican Train. Man, next time we have like a camp out or something, I need to remember to bring Mexican Train dominoes, and we could just play a long game with a bunch of people. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Yes, Dutch Blitz. I'm actually surprised you're the first person to say that, George, because I know a lot of people like to play Dutch Blitz. We actually have the cards here, Dutch Blitz cards, but we actually never played it at our house, but we have it. So yeah, that's Ticket to Ride, David. That's what I was trying to think of. Well, I drew a blank. I don't blame you because I was drawing a blank on it as well. Ticket to Ride is a favorite here at our household, and we really enjoy playing that as well. So a lot of fun. Keep them coming if you have other favorite games to play. I should be taking notes on this because that would be really smart. Let's see. We have Double 12. Never played that one either. Oh, Double 12. You're talking about like with dominoes. Yeah. I love that picture game that you take turns drawing. What's it called again? Um, uh, there's like not categories. There's oh yeah, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called too. Uno is a classic. Uno. Love me some Uno. Pictionary. There you go, Terry Cross. Thanks for jumping in. Pictionary. I think is maybe what you're referring to, Katie. Um, so keep them coming. Lots of fun. Katie mentions Quelf. Quelf is one of those where you got to kind of be prepared to do a little bit of everything. They played it there at the Tuckers, but that is a fun game as well. So yeah, keep them coming, and who knows, maybe next time you're looking for like a board game for your family to play or something like that. I'm looking here at this picture I have here. If you've never played Blockus, Blockus is a really fun game as well. Kanan loves to play some Sorry. We play some Life. Looking all we're not quite there, but we're almost past the age of Shoots and Ladders in Candyland. But we've played our fair share of Shoots and Ladders in Candyland. The Heartsmen and Settlers. Yes, we play Settlers of Catan, and so I enjoy doing that as well. That's always a fun one. So, yeah. Oh, Katie mentions Telestrations as well. That is a lot of fun, yes. Telestrations is a lot of fun. All right, we're going to move on to today's joke of the day. You can keep them coming, though, if you have them. The last joke of the day. I know you guys are going to miss my sense of humor. I don't know what you're going to do without that. You might be having to text me or call me up and ask me to tell you a joke, because you haven't heard one in a while. So I understand some of you are really going to miss this, and I apologize, but, sometimes even good things have to come to an end. Aggravation. Now, Terry Cross says aggravation. Is that the name of a game, or is it just a game that like younger siblings play with older siblings, or older siblings play with younger siblings, where the game is I'm just going to aggravate my other sibling? My kids like to play that game. Anyway, joke of the day. Here we go. I bet somebody's going to get this. Who's the first one that's going to get it? Here's your chance to jump in and get it. Ready? Here we go. What did the science book say to the math book? This one just came to mind because my kids are back to school. I know almost, if not all kids, close to all the kids are back to school. So I thought, with that being the time frame, here's a good time to ask this question and this joke. What did the science book say to the math book? First one to answer, no cheating, no Googling. Uh, uh, okay, Terry Cross mentioned the marbling game. Okay. What did the science book say to the math book? Any takers? Any takers? I'll wait for just a little bit because I bet somebody will get it. But no cheating, no Googling, no looking it up, any of those things. I bet if you thought about it long enough, somebody could get it. But I won't wait forever. I'll wait just a little bit and see if anybody jumps in, maybe 10 seconds or so. Oh, that's a good one. Colleen jumps in with "You can count on me." We're getting close. Close. Okay. Here's the answer. What did the science book say to the math book? Man, you got problems, right? Man, you got problems. And let me tell you, I know all about that. I've been helping some of my kids with their math homework. Cassie's usually the queen of helping with homework, but I've jumped in on a few of them here and there. And there you go. Another joke you can throw into your repertoire at any time. What did the science book say to the math book? Man, you got problems. There it is. Lots of problems. Thankfully, usually teacher only makes them do odds or evens, not all the problems. So that's nice. Anyway, we're going to jump back into the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth. And if you happen to have a copy of God's Word nearby, you can turn to Ruth chapter 4. And we're going to finish out the end of the chapter. And I'm actually going to remind you, last week we were looking at Ruth and Boaz. They were getting married. They're having a child whose name is Obed. And that's kind of what happens at the end of the book of Ruth. And I'm just going to, just to get us up to speed with where we were, I'm going to read verses 13 through 22. You can follow along with me. It says, "So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi," the women of the town there, the Bethlehem, said unto Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him." And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, "This is a son born to Naomi." And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, father of David. Now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begot Hezron, and Hezron begot Ram, and Ram begot Amminadab, and Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begot Boaz, and Boaz begot Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. And so this is how the book of Ruth ends. It ends with this genealogy of David. But before we move on, we're really going to focus, believe it or not, on Boaz and Naomi's son Obed, the birth of this son, and kind of what it means in this grand story that's going on here, in this grand narrative. Does anybody know what the name Obed means? Again, if you think about Bible times, people were much more specific about what names meant, and they had really deep and important meanings. Whereas today, a lot of times we just go, "Well, I just like that name," or maybe I had a friend or a family member that had that name, so I'm going to choose that name. And then maybe later on we find out what the name means. But oftentimes they would name a child something because of what it meant to them, or plans for, or those kinds of things. So does anybody know what the name Obed means? The name Obed, the son of Boaz and Ruth, that they have here. They get married. They have a child, and we see this whole genealogy that's given here. And I couldn't remember if I asked the question last week or not, but Colleen jumps in here and says, "He who serves." Yeah, so the idea of the name Obed, correct, is he who serves, or servant, right? So they have the delivery of the son, whose name is Obed, whose name means servant. I want you to think about this for just a second. God has been very gracious to Ruth from bringing her back from Moab, um, uh, giving her, allowing her to be part of one of his children. His grace continues as she moves to Bethlehem. He guides her to the fields of Boaz. Boaz takes care of her, falls in love with her. God's grace is even evident in the fact that the near kinsman rejects Ruth, and Boaz purchases her. And then after the marriage, God's grace continues into allowing them to conceive and have a son who again they name Obed, which means servant. And what we're going to see, even in these few verses here, is that God is going to use this baby to be a huge source of blessing to many. And by the way, let me just put this out here. If you ever think to yourself, man, I'd really like to be a blessing to people in some way. I wonder how I can be a blessing to them. From your, I'm just gonna say from a pastor's perspective, there are two things that I highly appreciate, I'm just gonna be honest. Far above anything else is faithfulness. Faithfulness, just being present, is so good and so helpful, so encouraging. But the second one is serving. Is finding a way to serve other people, to serve the Lord, to serve the local church, and in any way possible, just jumping in and saying, I want to serve, I want to help in any way that I can. Those things are a major blessing, and that's exactly what Obed is going to do. Obed is going to, his name means servant, and he's going to serve his family in generations to come in a bunch of different ways that are going to be a huge blessing. Again, if you happen, I don't know, most of you aren't, but if you happen to be wanting to write it down, Obed means servant or one who serves. Now, one of the ways he's going to do that is Obed is actually going to be a huge blessing to his parents, to Boaz and to Ruth. We have to understand that this is no ordinary baby. This is a gift of God from to Boaz and Ruth, almost like we like to do nowadays, combine their names, Booth, Boaz and Ruth. Or Roaz, I guess, Ruaz. But to Boaz and Ruth, Ruaz, here we go again. Ruth may have thought that she's never gonna have children. She wasn't sure. Her husband died. What's gonna happen? I don't know if anybody's gonna, if anybody's ever gonna want me. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna have my own family? Am I gonna have my own children? And then Boaz comes along, and she's so thankful for that. But then God also blesses them with a child. Now I want to say this, and I know this isn't the point of the text. But I want us to understand that and know where I stand as a pastor and where we stand as a church. I believe that every baby is a special gift from God and should be treated that way. That every baby deserves a loving home and caring parents, and Lord willing, parents that want to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I'm thankful for a state like Texas who's trying to put an end to abortion and people who would fight for those things, because those are beautifully created daughters and sons, creations of God, that are a special blessing. And what a privilege it is to bring new life into the world and then to guide that life so it matures and becomes everything that God has planned for it to be. I know this may sound like an interesting question, but sometimes I think it's good for us to do this. And here's the question I'm going to ask, right? What are some ways that children are or can be a blessing? Right, the Bible tells us that. The Old Testament tells us that as well, that children are heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is His reward. It tells us those things. We see it play out over and over again. And listen, my kids are sitting here watching that, and sometimes they'll make you want to beat your head up against the wall, or think you're going crazy or something like that. But then it's also wonderful to step back and realize how much of a blessing they are in so many different ways. So some of you may or may not have children. Maybe you have nieces or nephews, or maybe you do have children or grandchildren, and we'll talk about that as well here in just a minute. But what are some ways that children are or can be a blessing? What are some ways that children are. So Adam brings up a good one. Oh, and Colleen says the same thing. So this is definitely one. They both say they bring laughter. There's no doubt about it. One of my favorite things to do is to laugh with my kids. They bring laughter to our lives. And also they teach, especially when they're young. Colleen mentions they teach us to be thankful for the little things, right? It's so interesting. It's different taking a walk with a toddler than it is taking a walk with a with a teenager. You take a walk with a toddler; they're so close to the ground and everything. They want to see everything. They want to touch everything. They want to play with everything. Everything catches their attention, and they want to stop and enjoy the details. And with teenagers, sometimes you have these more in-depth, life-altering, or in good ways, life-giving conversations. Eric agrees with some of the things we've said before. They show us the lighter side of life, right? At this point, while they have things going on in their life, they don't have many of the pressures that an adult does, and the reminder of those things. The hearts mention that it's a blessing to have so much influence, to lead them to the Lord and disciple them, and that's a great thing. Cassie mentions they teach us so much about ourselves. One of those things is they teach us selflessness. And that's very true. Anita mentions that when they're adults, they help us when we're old, and that's very true. Very, very true. That they help us in so many different ways. Kristen mentions they remind us how to have fun with just the simple things in life, and I know they do. They teach the hearts mention they teach us much about God as well, and there's no doubt about that. It's funny, and I think I've shared this before. I remember so many times when I was growing up. I would ask my mom, "Mom, do you love me?" And she'd say, "Yeah, I love you." And my stepdad, I'd say, "Well, you love me more than him?" And she said, "Well, I love you differently than I love him." And I never really, as a kid, understood what that meant. But she said, "I have a love for you that you'll never understand until you have your own kid." And I thought, well, what is she talking about? And then lo and behold, you're like, yep, I love Gabe and Josiah and Keenan with all my heart, but my love for them is different than what it is for Cassie. It's very different. So there's so many blessings that this even Obed brings into their life, and they have an opportunity to raise him to honor the Lord. Another way, though, another person that Obed is a blessing to is Obed becomes a blessing to Naomi, right? And we read these stories where Naomi takes him and nurses him and cares for him. It looks like Naomi basically becomes his adopted mother. Is like a grandmother who informally adopts him and treats him as if he's her own son, and kind of like becomes her foster mother. But what's really interesting is the women of Bethlehem see this relationship and look at what they say in Ruth chapter 4 and verse 14. It says, and the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman. Now here's what's really interesting. Up to this point, we hear the word kinsman, and in our minds we think Boaz. But actually, right here, when it uses this word, it's actually speaking about Obed. It's not Boaz, it's Obed that's the kinsman. That hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. They're referring to Obed at this point, not Boaz. And then they go on and they list a few ways that Boaz is a blessing to Naomi. One of the things they say is that Obed was a restorer of life to Naomi. Now, one thing I am not yet, praise the Lord, is I am not a grandparent. And so that's an aspect of life that I don't understand yet. And maybe if you're a grandparent on here, you could speak to this a little bit better than I can. That a grandchild is like another level. It's something different than a child. And that, I even see it with my own children's grandparents, that when they're around my kids, there's this extra shot of energy even for them. Now that may peter out and they may need to go take a nap later on in the afternoon. Somebody's one time said, I have it written down here in my notes, that grandchildren are called grandchildren because they're grand when they come and they're grand when they leave. And I think probably a lot of grandparents feel that way. They're like, oh yes, this love and energy that I have and that they give me, but boy, it wears me out. And so yeah, Fred mentions it's enjoyable, and I'm sure it is. It's unlike anything else. Um, but I, I firmly believe that there's few better ways to get a new lease on life than than to start investing yourself in a younger generation. Um, I don't want us to forget, and we can be reminded here that every baby that is born into the world is a vote for the future. Whether you're a parent or grandparent, obviously Naomi here is a grandparent. I think it's important for us to focus on the future and not get lost in the past. And when you hold a baby in your arms, you're holding the future in your arms. And honestly, at this point, if you remember at the beginning of the book, Naomi probably didn't think she had a future, right? She thought life was done. I mean, what's even worth living? And here she is now holding this little baby that restored life to her. And now there's something to live for. There's a future to have. And so it's really neat to kind of see that play out for her. He was going to be a blessing to her in a couple of different ways, right? So not only would he be a restorer of life, he would actually one day care for um, the family that brought him into the world, including his grandmother Naomi. Uh, Boaz had redeemed the family inheritance, but then Obed is going to continue and expand on the family line and protect that inheritance, and he's going to use it to sustain Naomi. And he's certainly going to live up to the name servant, especially for his grandmother Naomi. Another way, though, is Obed is going to bring blessing to Bethlehem. And I know up to this point I don't have as many. I've actually skipped a couple questions because I accidentally mentioned the answers before I got to them, so I apologize for that. And tonight might be a little bit shorter because of that than usual, and that's fine. But Obed is going to bring a blessing to Bethlehem, right? This child is going to bring fame to both the family name and to his native town. Um, I think there was some worry that like Elimelech's name is going to disappear from Israel, but Obed is going to bring, literally he's going to bring fame to Bethlehem. He's going to bring glory to Bethlehem. And this would obviously happen through his grandson, David, right? But even more so from David's greater son, Jesus Christ. And so there's this comfort in knowing that our name isn't going to perish, but as a matter of fact, it's going to increase in name, and it's going to bring attention to this little town of Bethlehem. It's still going to be this little town we sing about, little town of Bethlehem. It's going to be known around the world. And it's going to be because God is going to bless Obed with a child of his own who's going to have children, who down the line is going to bring the Messiah into the world. Taking that even further, Obed wouldn't just be a blessing just to Bethlehem, he was going to be a blessing to Israel, right? Again, Obed was the grandfather of David. Obed has Jesse, Jesse has David. One of the greatest rulers, one of the greatest kings, if not the greatest one, Israel has ever known. And I know when we mention David, a lot of times people, if we say play word association with David, go ahead and do it. Play word, I'll do it. This is a question, and I don't have it on here. Play word association with David. You hear David, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Don't think through this. When I say David, what's the next word that comes to mind for you? Okay, David. I'll even do it this way. David and fill in the blank. What is it? What comes to mind? Just type it out. David and what? Don't think too hard. Just type it. David and boom. What? David and word association. What comes to mind? Here we go. Right? So David and so far I'm getting the answers I thought it would. David and Goliath. David and Bathsheba. David and Goliath. David and Goliath. David and Bathsheba. Right? Those are typically the thoughts that come to mind when they hear about King David is that's the word association comes in. And I'm not diminishing that because David did commit great sins, right? I'm not diminishing what happened with Bathsheba, but he was also a great man of faith, and God used David to build the kingdom of Israel. And he used David to overcome many enemies, to expand the inheritance, to worship. So Terry mentions the Psalms. He leads Israel to worship God, right? He wrote songs for the Levites to sing. I believe he devised and built musical instruments from the play. Um, he gathered for a lifetime. He gathered wealth for them to build a temple, and obviously that wasn't God's plan for him, right? But he gathered the wealth to be able to make that happen. And David was a great servant of God who brought untold blessings to Israel, and that came Obed to Jesse to David. But I also want us to understand tonight that as we expand on this even further, that Obed would bring blessing to the whole world, right? Because the greatest thing that God did for Obed or for Jesse or for David was not to give, David as, victory over his enemies or allow David to build wealth. The greatest privilege that God gave this family was being the ancestor of the Messiah. Because you follow the lineage that then leads to Jesus Christ. Think about it. David wanted to build a house for God. But God instead told David, I'm going to build a house. And so when the Bible talks about a house, it's like a family. When you're speaking of, I'm going to build your house, I'm going to build your family for David. And David knew that the Messiah would come from the kingly tribe of Judah, right? But nobody knew what family it would be. But God chose Obed's family. He chose Jesse's family. He chose David's family, right? God chose David's family. And the Redeemer would be known as, when you read the book of Matthew, the son of David. And from Obed's loins comes not just a blessing to Bethlehem, not just a blessing to his parents, not just a blessing to, notice how it goes, not just a blessing to his parents, but a blessing to his grandparents. And not just a blessing to his grandparents, but a blessing to the entire town he comes from. And not just a blessing to the entire town he comes from, but from the entire nation that he comes from. And not from the entire nation he comes from, but for the whole world. Little did these people in Bethlehem know that God had great plans for this little baby that came from Ruth and Boaz. That Obed would have a son named Jesse, and Jesse would have 8 sons, the youngest who would be named David the king. You say, Pastor, why do you say all of that? And why do we take the time on the story of Ruth and Boaz? Why do we take this last opportunity and focus so much on Obed? Because I want to end this way. I want us to remember that the next time you hold a baby, or the next time you see a child, and I'll even turn it, the next time you get frustrated with a kid, the next time you're maybe inconvenienced by a child, maybe you're trying to listen to something, they're being loud. Maybe you're trying to participate in something, they're making it difficult. Maybe they're not obeying like they should be, and I'm not saying that's right. We need to deal with that in discipline. I've shared plenty of thoughts on that in the past, okay? But I want you to understand that when that happens, that little one might be the one for whom God has planned a great future. Maybe as you teach them in class, maybe as you raise them in your home, whatever it may be. I'm sure Ruth and Boaz were so thankful for Obed, but I'm sure in their wildest dreams they didn't imagine that it would create their grandson would be King David, that would lead to the Messiah. And I just want us to remember in those moments that little one might be one for whom God has planned a great future. And that brings us back to really a great point in the book of Ruth that encapsulates the entire point of Ruth that I think is important for us to understand. That is this: to never underestimate the power of the grace of God. Because really, that's what this story, the story, and I didn't delve deep into it, but there's a Hebrew word that's used over and over again, chesed, which is a word for love, and that's a major theme here. But in the end, God was gracious to Naomi, and God was gracious to Ruth, and God is gracious to Boaz, and God is gracious to Bethlehem, and God is gracious to Israel, and God is gracious to the whole world. And sometimes when we look at little babies, we don't think about a whole lot about the grace of God. Um, I'm sure when they were leaving Moab, heading for Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth were not thinking probably very much at that moment about the grace of God. We know Naomi wasn't. When they went to the field for the first time, they were maybe hoping for the grace of God, but could not imagine what God had in store. But then just time after time after time, they saw the power of the grace of God absolutely just transform their life, but not just in meeting their needs, but long into the future. And here's this woman, here's this lady, Ruth, who had this unending love for her mother-in-law. Boaz, who had this gracious love for Ruth, a Moabitess. Those two people come together, they have a little baby, and God graciously uses that child to be a blessing to many, to his parents, to his grandparents, to his city, to his nation, to the whole world, and even to me and you today. And when we read the book of Ruth, I hope we don't miss, in all the details of the story, overwhelming power of the grace of God. And that's not just something God does in the Old Testament. It's not just something God did back then. I want you to understand it's something God can do today. God can do through you. God can do through your children. And so I want to encourage you not to lose hope in that God's grace can overcome any of those things. And God can use even the difficult moments of life to dole out His grace and do something amazing, something we couldn't ever possibly imagine. I want to say, and I know we're in and early, I know it's only been about 40 minutes, and that's just kind of the way the book of Ruth has gone, because I knew I didn't have enough time to do all of this last week. I wasn't sure how much time I was going to take up today, but I'm so glad that you guys have been able to join in this conversation. And through the book of Ruth, we've been through lots of books now, so many now I can't even remember them all that we've gone through in this way and in this form. I know we started like in 2nd and 3rd John. I know we did Philemon. We've done the book of Ruth. We've done a couple other things mixed. I think we did the book of Ecclesiastes, did we maybe? And a few other things along the way. And just thankful for your participation in it, and look forward to it. I do want to say this: if at all possible, don't miss this Sunday for a couple of reasons. 2 reasons. So hang with me. Don't close me out yet. 2 things. Number 1, if at all possible, make it to our 9:30 a.m. discipleship class. I know you all can do it. Most of you are to work before 9:30 a.m. on a regular day, and so you're even still getting able to sleep in and make it to church by 9:30. Make it by 9:30. We're starting a new series. I've been preparing it already this week, and I'm really excited. The Lord's just really burdened my heart about something that I want to share with you guys as well. That it's been really helpful. It's been a conviction to me already this week, and look forward to sharing it with you at 9:30. But also, I'm going to share with you some new plans for midweek that I think will be. It'll be an adjustment. It'll be a change. But I think in a lot of ways, it could potentially be really, really good for our church family. And so I want to share those with you this Sunday as well. And we're going to go on into Romans chapter 8. We're going to continue through Romans chapter 8, I think verses 17 through 25. And look forward to doing that. But hope you guys can join us on Sunday, 9:30 discipleship class, 10:30 morning worship service, and we look forward to seeing you guys there. As maybe you can be there. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you later.